Okay, good evening, Council. I think we're just waiting. Councillor Withy's here. I'm just going to wait for him to be sure his camera's on. I guess we can get started, and Councillor Withy will get his camera on as soon as he can there. So thank you for meeting at this special council meeting. The meeting is being held electronically in accordance with Section 238 of the Municipal Act, and I will now call upon the clerk to conduct a roll call of council present.
Thank you. Please physically raise your hand when I call your name. Deputy Mayor Nancy Alcock, Councillor Dan Armour, Councillor Jason Fitzgerald, Councillor Dion Schumacher, Councillor Bob Stone is away, my understanding.
Yes, Councillor Stone is absent.
Councillor Brian Thompson, Councillor Jonathan Weed, Councillor Tim Whitby.
Here.
Thank you. And Mayor Karen Terziano.
Present.
Thank you. We have a quorum.
Okay. I have a resolution moved by Councillor Schumacher and seconded by Councillor Alcock. Be it resolved that the special council meeting agenda dated Thursday, September 17th, 2020 be adopted as printed and circulated. All in favor? And that's carried. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, we will move right into the pandemic. And we have two things on the agenda, some updates and also our assessment center. And I'm just going to reverse them and do the assessment center first. And then our CAO is going to give us a brief update on some news out of Dr. Gardner's chat today. So first off, I have a resolution moved by Councillor Withy and seconded by Councillor Thompson. Whereas there's not currently a COVID-19 assessment center in the town of Huntsville, and whereas it has been stated by the Premier of Ontario on multiple occasions the importance of maximum testing for the coronavirus disease, and whereas Council believes the absence of a Huntsville site may result in an unnecessary delay or a barrier to access testing for our residents and visitors within our community, and whereas the town of Huntsville, in conjunction with the Muskoka paramedics, and our Huntsville physicians have recognized the significance of a Huntsville site and have agreed to partner and support the opening of a Huntsville COVID-19 assessment center. Now therefore be it resolved that Council applauds Muskoka Paramedic Services and our Huntsville physicians for their recognition of this important service for our community and provides their thanks for their willingness to assist. And further, that Council supports and directs staff to continue to work with the Muskoka Paramedic Services and the Huntsville physicians to provide an ongoing Huntsville COVID-19 assessment center. And further, that any costs associated with the assessment center be taken from the provincial COVID-19 funds, including but not limited to cleaning costs, the use of the active living center, and the return of 2 part-time staff members. And just before I open it up for any questions, I want to reiterate much of what the motion said, in that we're so appreciative of Dr. Marr, who spearheaded this and contacted us to make sure that we had a COVID testing center, and has worked extremely hard behind the scenes to make this happen. The Muskoka paramedics, who have stepped up and consistently say whatever we can do to help, and our town staff, who have worked tirelessly for the last 2 weeks to make this happen. Initially, we wanted it to be drive-through and indoor center, and we haven't been able to make that happen, but we have been able to make it happen in the active living center, where we will have 2 access points, one for asymptomatic people and one for symptomatic people, so that we're not crossing over. There's been a lot of work put into this. We're operating Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and as long as the weather's nice, we will continue to do drive-through testing outdoors. And we look good for the first 2 or 3 days of this. So I appreciate Council's willingness to entertain us putting some of our COVID funds to this venture, and I will open it up for any questions.
Thank you. Mayor Karen Terziano.
Seeing none, we will move right into the assessment center. And just before I open it up for any questions, I will open it up for any questions. 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 I will open it up Councillor Thompson.
I don't have a question, Your Worship, and thank you. Just a comment, I guess, that how appreciative I feel, and I think we all feel, towards the work you'd put into it, and along with Dr. Mara and Danny Armour's group, the parameds. So kudos and thank you for the work you've done on it. It's just been really, I think it's sort of indicative in some ways of the spirit we have in this town, where people get together and gather together and say, hey, we have a situation, let's make it work. And I think that's exactly what's happened. So thanks to your input, Your Worship. Appreciate it very much.
Councillor Withey.
Thank you, Worship. I think obviously this is an excellent plan. I like the fact that we're getting it running right away and working on the drive-through later. I know there's some options on the table, some discussions I've had with myself with some people that are in this mix. It's unfortunate the way the rhetoric sort of flew around there for a while, but it doesn't seem to me like anything new. But I think this is great for our community, and we've got to, whatever it takes money-wise, keep this going, because we've seen recently uptick in cases. We're still not, we're only halfway through September, and things are starting to move up. So we've got to keep on top of this stuff as quick as we can. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, so I'll call a question. All in favor? And that's carried. And thank you very much, Council, and thank you everyone involved. And I think our CAO's update on some conversations today with Dr. Gardner will just prove how important that resolution was going forward too. So, Madam CAO.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the Simcoe-Muskoka District CAOs have the pleasure weekly, pretty much since the pandemic had started, to meet with Dr. Gardner and Dr. Robalato, who have been amazing at keeping us up to date with information as it unfolds related to the pandemic. So today's discussion, as Council is aware, the Premier did announce today that there were some restrictions that were put in place for certain areas with respect to numbers. And that was Toronto, Peel, and Ottawa, as he referred to the hotspots. And there was a restriction in unmonitored social gathering and organized public events. And that resulted in 10 people congregating indoors and 25 people congregating outdoors. So at the current time, the Premier has put those in place just for those specific areas. So this morning during our conversation with Dr. Gardner, he did speak to that a little bit, that he thought that perhaps there might be a change in some numbers. He did confirm that cases continue to increase tenfold. Cases that we're actually seeing right now are just the tip of the iceberg, is his opinion. And in the next 3 weeks, he figures that we'll see some fairly substantial results of a result of what's happening today multiplied. So he said we need to take action now in that regard to ensure that it doesn't turn into something absolutely terrible. And he said that the Simcoe-Muskoka District Health Unit has actually requested that the province reduce the size of the gatherings for Simcoe-Muskoka. As identified in the announcement today, that was not the case with the announcement. But what Dr. Gardner indicated is that if our area wasn't included in those numbers, that he would be looking at actually passing an order for Simcoe-Muskoka that would actually follow the same restrictions that were put in place for the 3 areas that were identified by the Premier. The other option he could certainly do is he could issue something called an order. Unfortunately, an order is only enforceable against businesses and organizations, not specifically individuals. So it would be a little bit more difficult for Dr. Gardner to implement an actual instruction as opposed to an order. So he talked a little bit about too that we're seeing some changes in the transmission of COVID-19 in nursing homes as well as in businesses. We actually had one in Huntsville, as you're aware. We did have a spread of COVID-19 in one of our local restaurants. So that's something that he's starting to see an increase with. So our health unit is certainly concerned about transmission in long-term care and an upswing in senior centers as well. There have been some evidence of some COVID cases in some of the schools within Simcoe Muskoka. One specifically, Aurelia, actually had a teacher who tested positive, but there was no evidence of transmission. So they're really keeping a close eye on the school system as well, because this is, I think, week 2 of that. But the clear message that Dr. Gardner got across to the area CAOs was that he highly recommends that people discontinue interacting with anyone outside of their household. He said it's really important that people focus on not bringing people together. So any effort that we individually or as an organization can make that would restrict the ability for people to congregate, he could not stress that enough. So that was a clear message that the CAOs did receive today. He said it's very clear that the restriction of 10 people in a social circle is obviously not working. You would have received an update today from the Simcoe Muskoka District Health Unit that clearly stated that there was a 70% increase in the number of cases in the last week. And he said it's quite a bit higher than anything that we've seen since the end of June. So as they anticipated, the second wave is certainly well underway. So it couldn't stress again enough about how important it is not to gather. There were also some discussions about certain events within the community, and Dr. Gardner also suggested that municipalities should not be supporting or trying not to encourage not to proceed with events that would result in congregation of large numbers of people. So we may not have care and control over those events, but the message that our municipality should be getting out to our community is the importance of not even having those events where maybe that number of people can congregate. So as I noted, it was just specifically to those 3 areas. It is important to note as well in the provincial update we received today that the restrictions do not apply to events or gatherings that are held in staffed businesses or facilities. So for example, if Dr. Gardner were to proceed with an order within Simcoe Muskoka, the restaurants, the cinemas, convention centers, recreational sporting events would not be restricted by that 10 and 25 number. It would still fall under the 50 and the 100. So we will wait and see what our local health unit decides to do. And as soon as I have any information from them, I will certainly be sharing that with council. So I would be happy to answer any questions, Your Worship, that council may have.
Thank you. Questions from council? Yes, Councillor Armour.
Thank you, Worship. Through you to the CEO. I'm just curious if Dr. Gardner was to put in an order, who is going to police his order in such a large community, and who is it, the OPP, or is it going to be our local bylaw?
So through Your Worship, so that was also discussed. And one of the challenges that the Simcoe Muskoka District Health Unit has is if an order is actually activated, it's up to them to enforce it, which poses a huge challenge because the resources are not there. So if an instruction was provided, then he would rely on the assistance of the local municipalities. As you know, the emergency declaration is not an order, so for us to have the ability to enforce some of these things is fairly restricted. But if it is the health unit putting an order in place, it's actually the health unit that would have to enforce it.
Councillor Thompson?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Denise. The Premier announced some pretty hefty increases in fines today. Incredibly heavy-duty fines, as a matter of fact. In the event that Dr. Gardner does follow along the province's guidelines with regards to Toronto and Peel and so on and so forth, would those fines still apply in this particular case in this area here? Or do we have any idea what that would all involve?
So through Your Worship, I would have to confirm with Dr. Gardner on that. It is my understanding that if the order is actually put in place, that there would be the ability to apply those fines. But again, I'd have to confirm that with Dr. Gardner's office, and I could report back to council.
Councillor Schumacher.
So with things like this Sunday and the virtual Terry Fox run coming up, the hope is people are being safe about it, but can we, if he imposes this by say Friday or something, is that going to impact the number of people that might have gotten together to walk in groups or run in groups?
Through your worship, it would impact that. So if that order is in place, then the restriction would be the 25 inside and the 10 outside. And it would be in anything that was outside of staffed businesses and facilities. So I would think that that event this weekend would not be permitted if the order was put in place.
I think maybe though the 25 outside, so I think you could probably walk with your family, which I think is exactly what the Terry Fox organizers are encouraging is very, very small groups. Do something with your own family. So I don't think it would preclude that. Councillor Armour.
Thank you, Worship. Through you again. I'm just curious, did Dr. Gardner say anything about other health units in the area and what they're thinking of doing? Or are they thinking of imposing an order also?
He did not. He did not mention what other health units were doing in the area. The Premier did certainly note that, you know, he would like to hear from municipal leaders and different health unit areas if there was something that he would like for him to consider to impose. He did mention that, but Dr. Gardner did not mention what other areas were doing.
Okay. Oh, sorry, Councillor Withey.
Thank you, Your Worship. So obviously this new order is for specific reasons and for specific kind of gatherings. You know, I note that I've got nieces that live in Toronto that couldn't wait to get back to Queens to go to school. And I'm sure there's a lot of shenanigans going on there. My concern, however, is we're looking at opening up our facilities. And if these numbers keep trending up and these orders keep getting stronger, I'm hopeful that we have a plan to roll back some of these things that are going to result in, you know, congregation of some people at some level. I just want to make that comment because it's very concerning. It seems like we're on a bit of a slippery slope here as time marches towards winter. So I want to make sure that we're considering all our options when it comes to our stuff as well. Thank you.
And I think we are, and I don't know, Madam CEO, if you'd like to comment on that, but I think we have had discussions and we know that the pool opened on Monday. They did so very well. There's been great feedback to it. It was very safe. The ice is scheduled to open this coming Monday, so we certainly are aware of that. But I think we're also aware that if things change, we'll be quick to make some alternative decisions. Denise, did you want to add anything there? Or?
Yeah, if I may, Your Worship. So we opened up the certain services within the Canada Summit Centre based on the ability that was granted through the province with the numbers being lifted and the restrictions being lightened. So we did that. I'd like to say we did that based on demand within the community, and that's what was brought to council. We had lots of requests from individuals saying we're really eager to get back to the pool, we're really eager to get back on the ice, we're really eager to try to get back to life as we used to know it. So that's why we proceeded with the plan, and I do feel staff did an amazing job ensuring that proper policies were in place and safety provisions were in place. They worked diligently with the health unit, and we were able to do that within our community. So if the numbers do change, I am under the understanding that Dr. Gardner's intent would be to instill an order that was similar to what was applied to Ottawa, Peel, and Toronto. And that would strictly be the 10 and the 25 for the social gatherings, gatherings that are not held in a staff, business, or facility. So that would still actually allow us to proceed with having a maximum of 50 people inside of each service unit within the Canada Summit Centre. So there would be nothing that would, unless it was a direction or a desire from council for us to retract those services based on Dr. Gardner's comments about safety and restricting social gathering. There would still be nothing that would really sort of indicate to staff that we would have to, by that order, stop those services. I guess it would be up to community members if they felt safe to access those services. It would be one's choice whether they felt that was safe. But unless it was something that the council felt was something that we wanted to do by stopping those services again based on Dr. Gardner's recommendation, we would still proceed unless otherwise advised.
All right, so seeing no other questions, I just want to remind, in case there's anybody watching tonight that hasn't seen our press release, and I didn't mention earlier, our COVID testing will happen on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and it does start tomorrow over at the Active Living Center, behind the Summit Center. So anybody who needs to access that, starts tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. Okay, so we're moving on to the report from the Huntsville Public Library. And I'll read the resolution first, and that's moved by Councillor Wiebe and seconded by Councillor Schumacher. Be it resolved that staff be directed to proceed with the following projects. A, interior structure at $10,000, exterior at $30,000, roof repair $17,000, air quality testing at $2,000, and this to be funded through the 2020 library operational and capital savings. And further, that staff include $90,000 in the draft 2021 capital budget for investigation of the remaining exterior walls to be funded from the library capital reserve. And I will turn it over to Pete and Chris to walk us through that report.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to thank you, Mayor and Council, for holding a special council meeting today. The report in front of you is to provide a list of capital repairs that required Council to approve a variation of projects from 2020 approval budget, and to provide an overview of expected repairs and maintenance projects for the next 10 years and capital commitment required to fund these projects. Chris and I are here to for any questions that you may have.
Okay. Chris, did you want to add anything at this point?
No, I think Pete did a really good job, and the contents within the report speaks exactly to what is needed now, and a future ambitious goal to provide some additional protection around that building. So, like Pete said, we're here to answer any technical questions or anything related to the project. So, yeah.
Okay, we'll go to questions. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Chris, I would expect. Chris, with regards to the further, the $90,000 to the investigation of the remaining exterior walls, what is that all about? Is there some kind of concern that there's a problem with the exterior walls? Is that inside or is that outside?
Yeah. So through you, Your Worship, when the front area of the building was exposed, we noticed that there weren't any weeping tile around the front exterior of it. So without further investigation of digging up along the edge and regrading and things like that, we're kind of playing it safe with the projection of that 90,000 to actually investigate and make sure that there is that weeping tile around there. The repair that we're seeing brought forward with the engineer's report and creating the pump and the weeping tile along the front will mitigate the issue that we're seeing today. However, there is some concerns if through further investigation there isn't any weeping tile along those two walls to actually install and make sure that that building is protected as per building code. So that's basically what that projection is.
Follow up?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. The dollar figure, Chris, of $90,000, that seems sort of rather generous in a way. I mean, could you maybe elaborate a little bit on why we're looking at a potential of $90,000?
So unfortunately, I had actually kicked that over to Pete because he was in he was talking to the contractor to get ideas of what the actual cost may be. So Pete.
So the $90,000 is an estimate on what it would cost to get locates done, come in and excavate, put the proper weeping tile, and then to refill with the proper materials on top of that. So once again, it was a a quick estimate. We had to move fairly quickly with this, but with that price, we would have to follow the proper procurement policies and go out for RFPs or FQs on top of that.
Councillor Withey?
Thank you, Your Worship. This is I like this report. It's well done. I appreciate a couple quick questions. The amount of the repair, I'm assuming is reduced by the recent insurance claims, because they would in fact be repairing deficiencies themselves. And it said these amounts are net of the deductible. What is our deductible on that? So sorry, two quick little questions there. I don't know if Julia or...
Through you, Your Worship. Julia, I think, is here to answer those questions.
So our deductible was $5,000 in 2019, and we moved it up to $10,000 in 2020. So we have had 3 claims on that building. And when we provided, I believe it's appendix, with a summary of what we've spent so far, those are net of the deductibles. So we have spent quite a bit more on that building with those 3 claims.
But the claims, yes, thank you. But the claims would have solved some of the ongoing issues. I mean, that's...
So I believe these are new issues that we're trying to deal with. So they're not a result of those. They're not a result of that sewer claim that was initially put on. They were only doing the paying for the resulting damage of that. But the actual issue we have to pay for to fix that.
Can I ask?
Sure, go ahead.
One more. Thanks for that, Julia. The other question I had, when you get to the options, it says option 1, move forward with the scope of the work outlined, total cost 59, funded 2020 library operational and capital saving, that's recommended. Option 2 talks about this, it's same wording except out of library reserves. And when you jump down to what the reserves are, I can't match up which library reserves is not recommended, because there is library renovation reserve of $310,000, library capital reserve of 76. I mean, there's different reserves there that looks like could fall into any of these options. They didn't match up for me. I wonder if I could get some insight on that, please.
Go ahead, Julia.
So just to give a bit of overview. So right now the library, as you know, is closed. So they do have a significant surplus that they're expecting to the end of the year, because they haven't had a lot of their part-time staff returning back to the building, and also they've had some other reductions in costs. So a lot of the overages have been in the repairs and maintenance of that building. So we were looking at overall corporately, they would be able to fund these costs of the building through the savings that they would have for 2020. And that way it would leave the reserves intact for that building if there's further repairs that need to be done in future years. So where it gets a bit confusing is that right now the library reserves for the building aren't separated out necessarily between the town and the library. So they've always been under the umbrella of the library, even though they are actual under the town. So under the MOU right now, the library is part of the operations is part of the library system rather than the town from the facility system. So this is where it's a bit convoluted right now, because we do have money sitting there, but in the past, the library board has used that for the purposes of the library operations. So we want to make sure that we're leaving that one reserve intact for the renovation and for the building, so that we have that for future years. So that's why we're thinking that this year it should come out of the operating savings.
Councillor?
Sorry, thank you. But there's a library capital reserve and a library renovation reserve. Should they not, aren't they the same thing?
So through your worship, the library capital reserve is a general reserve
that the library and the board use. So at the end of the year, if they have any surpluses or deficit, it goes into that general reserve. It's almost similar to our working capital reserve, where it's like the town's general reserve fund that we use year to year. That's kind of their reserve fund just for their operations.
But it says capital projects, and then renovation says renovation and expansion of existing. I mean, it sounds like it could be capital projects as well. Anyway, I don't need to beat this horse to death. That's okay. I get it. It's all there. Thank you.
Councillor Armour, I think you were next.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. Just a quick question to Pete or Chris. Once this work begins, when do you see the building being opened again? Do you have like time frame you like to see it happen?
We have the timeframes in the report through your worship. Sorry, we do have the timeframes in the report. Once we can approve the work to be done through the contractor, the interior week should take no more than 2 weeks. Once the interior work is done, we would be able to, interior work was done, and then we had an air quality testing done, we would be able to bring staff back. So I would think 3 to 4 weeks we could have staff back in that facility, if everything goes as planned. And during that time, we could also be working on that outside as well.
Pete, I have one question. In the $30,000 estimate for the exterior work, is that new money to be spent going forward? We've already spent a certain sum of money to have it all dug up and investigated. Is this an additional 30,000 or?
Correct. Included in this 30,000 is drainage, a new sump pump. Right now there is nothing in there, and the water table is equal to the same as in the storm sewer, so it needs to be a sump pump to pump it into that. And then also with the new building regulations, we have to put a backflow preventer on, so when we have those major rainstorms, it doesn't backflow into the foundation. So these are all added things, plus the material put back in.
Okay. So I think just we can probably, this work needs to be done, and we can probably approve this resolution and get this work done. But I really believe that we need to look at the library building overall and determine how much more money we want to put into that building, or if we want to start exploring alternatives. Even putting money aside in the 2021 draft capital, it's draft, so we're not really committing to anything. Otherwise, I would suggest maybe we drop that piece, but we need to get this work done. The library board is very anxious to get the library back open in whatever form that takes, and I think many users are very anxious to get it back open in whatever form that opening is. So if there's no other questions, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Thank you for that, council, staff. I now actually have a resolution to go into closed session, moved by Councillor Alcock, seconded by Councillor Fitzgerald. Be it resolved that the next portion of the meeting be closed to the public, commencing now at 6:06 p.m. for the purpose of considering the following matter pertaining to the following section under the Municipal Act. Section 239(2), litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, the local planning appeal tribunal, 100-200 Treasure Island and 622 North Wasiosa Lake Road, file Z 29-2019 and B 45-2019. All in favor? And that's carried, and we all have to go out of this meeting and back into the other link. So see you in a minute. Thanks.
body looks in great shape too.
I think we're all back. Okay, council, I have a resolution moved by Councillor Fitzgerald and seconded by Councillor Armour. Be it resolved that confirmation bylaw 2020-80 be received, numbered, and read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed the 17th day of September 2020. All in favor? It's carried. I should probably have noticed there was nothing coming out of closed session, in case anybody was wondering. And I have a resolution moved by Councillor Alcock and seconded by Councillor Thompson. Be it resolved that we do now adjourn at 6:49 p.m. All in favor? And that's carried. And thank you, council, for having a special council meeting. Good night.